Donald Trump is doubling down on his global trade tariffs. The president says he's raising a new levy on imports from the US's worldwide trading partners from 10 to 15%. Trump has acted in response to a United States Supreme Court ruling striking down most of his previous trade tariffs. Justices ruled they were imposed illegally.
In France, the initial reaction to the Supreme Court ruling was one you might expect. To Trump, this cognac maker says, with more than a little irony as he raises his glass.
President Trump says, "You do what I tell you, otherwise I punish you." We don't deserve to be punished. We're human beings.
When tariffs were at their highest, he said orders to the US had totally dried up. Since the court ruling, orders to the US were back on again. But the celebratory toasts soon became the drowning of sorrows. Because on the other side of the Atlantic,
today I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122 over and above our normal tariffs already being charged. And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country from unfair trading practices of other countries and companies.
Then, a day later, Trump doubled down. He said he would go directly to the maximum rate of 15%, and that the new tariffs have been legally tested.
This was an important case to
Some
me.
call Trump's action strategy, others say it's merely stoking chaos. But it's clearly a signal of defiance to the Supreme Court. And now it's up to Congress. Under the law, the House has 150 days to decide whether these high tariffs remain in place.
Right, for some analysis now, we're joined by Jeffrey Frankel, Professor of Capital Formation and Growth at the Harvard Kennedy School. He also served at the US President's Council of Economic Advisors. Great to have you on DW News. So first and foremost, what do you make of Donald Trump raising his tariffs despite the Supreme Court ruling?
Well, of course, first he tried to replace the tariffs that were ruled illegal by putting on a 10% tariff yesterday, and today he woke up and changed his mind and raised it to 15%. And I suspect that he will change it again before the week is out. He does change his mind a lot. He should not have been surprised by the Supreme Court decision. They were just upholding what the lower court had said, and it's really in black and white that the Congress is supposed to be in charge of tariff policy, not the president.
What impact do you think this will have on global markets?
I guess in terms of the financial markets, I guess people are used to surprises from President Trump, and maybe it won't have much effect. I think the Supreme Court decision is one of the first times that someone has told him no, and at the highest level, no, he can't have his way, and so I think that's a good sign, and I would guess that maybe markets would be encouraged by that.
Now, will Trump have to use his favorite economic weapon differently then in the future?
There are different pieces of legislation over history that he could use. He's using ones that have improperly, and that today's and yesterday's 10%, 15% tariffs is on something called Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act. And it's supposed to be in the event of a balance of payments crisis. It was passed when the dollar, it was in free fall after the breakup of the Bretton Woods system of fixed exchange rates. I remember once during the early Reagan administration, they talked about using it, but decided they couldn't, that it wouldn't apply. If he can't use that, he'll use national security. He doesn't care. He'll grab at any excuse. So I'm sure that as the courts can find them improper, he'll just come up with a different one.
Tell us, what does this mean then for US trade with, say, Europe and, for example, the planned US-EU trade deal?
It's more of the same. That you can't expect him to keep a same policy from one day to the next, the same position from one day to the next, and you can't expect him to abide by an agreement once he is, even if he has signed it. So it's more of the same. But as I say, the encouraging note is that finally the Supreme Court is saying no to him.
Tell me, Jeffrey, you're in the States. How is this actually impacting, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and, even up to the big corporations that we see in the United States? Because there's a lot of sort of, as you've mentioned, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of changes to, Donald Trump is changing his mind, we'll say, frequently enough. How does all of that impact then those businesses and those business people?
It was a small business that was a lead plaintiff that brought this suit that resulted in the Supreme Court striking down the tariffs. It was a wine importing business, and the tariffs were so high that they would have to go out of business. There was no way they would continue. And it's kind of ironic that the big corporations stood by while they let the smaller companies lead the legal charge. It really makes business harder to do at every level, small, medium, large businesses.
All right, we're going to leave it there, Jeffrey, but great to get your analysis tonight. Jeffrey Frankel, Professor of Capital Formation and Growth at Harvard Kennedy School.
I'd like to welcome Maurice Obstfeld, a senior fellow with the Peterson Institute for International Economics. He joins us from Berkeley, California. Maurice, Trump, of course, now planning to raise his tariffs from 10 to 15% despite the Supreme Court ruling. What do you make of that?
The president has statutory authority to impose 15% tariffs for a period of 150 days. So what he is doing doesn't contravene the Supreme Court decision. It's a way of putting tariffs in place for a period of months until he can devise new authorities for extending those tariffs further into time.
What impact do you think this will have on global markets?
Well, global markets, as of yesterday, were fairly benignly inclined with respect to these. At this stage, there's so much volatility in U.S. decision-making that the markets seem to have stopped reacting strongly to Trump's day-to-day changes of mind. How they will feel Monday morning is another matter.
I suppose not surprisingly, some have argued tariffs are now clearly the primary tool of his second term, the instrument of choice. But do you foresee circumstances that might compel the president to start using that tool differently, if not sparingly?
I doubt it. Tariffs seem to be the main economic tool. They seem to be the tool he uses when he wants to coerce countries into policies that they wouldn't otherwise adopt. And he's said throughout his career that he loves tariffs. Tariffs are the most beautiful word in the English language. So I think what we'll see is different ways to impose tariffs, maybe less flexible use because of the Supreme Court decision. But I don't think they're going away or will, in fact, be used much more sparingly down the road.
What does this mean for U.S. trade with Europe and the planned U.S.-EU trade deal?
Well, at this point, the 15% rate is being extended to a number of countries that did not make comparable trade deals as the EU made. So, understandably, I think there are questions about where that deal stands. Furthermore, the European Parliament suspended consideration of the trade deal over the Greenland issue. And I doubt there's much appetite to come back to that. So how that will evolve in the future is anyone's guess.
Appreciate your time. Maurice Obstfeld, a senior fellow with the Peterson Institute for International Economics. Again, many thanks.
Thank you.